So it was a very interesting experience last night. I was reading a book. It's called Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza. Now, if you haven't read it, I definitely recommend it. Now, why would I recommend it? It's because it teaches you about the supernatural. And when I say supernatural, I'm talking about different dimensions. Now, hear me out. I have been introduced to a circle where spirituality is a very big subject. It's a very big topic. And I've seen and I've heard things that have been very interesting to me. And I'm extremely open-minded. I don't like to cut off things that I can see the learnings from and potential from. And to be honest with you, as I continue to journey in my life, as I continue to expand helping other people, the more I delve into the spiritual side of things, the more I've noticed that I can help people on a very deep level mentally. And I had a very interesting experience last night. And just as a little pre-frame for you, I've been coaching fitness for 7 years now, helping people get in shape. And in the last year, I've been actually helping people formally, actually formally coaching and helping people mentally as well, with their mindset. I've been coaching sales as well for a little bit. And in a lot of that sales training, you'd be surprised how much of the mental is required. And how they might have a tonality problem or something on the forefront that's stopping them from being good at sales, but that's because of a deep-rooted personal issue where maybe they're afraid of speaking up, they're afraid of challenging someone. You'll be surprised how deep it can actually go from a personal development point of view. So there was an interesting transition that happened in the last year doing that, where I was like, you know what, I'm gonna help people with this because in the past 7 years of coaching fitness, then also coaching sales within that time frame, I just noticed how big the mindset component of it was. And that's a little pre-frame for you in context of my experience and what I've been doing so far. I've worked with some pretty high-level people in the online business space as well, people who have also coached, worked with Dean Graziosi. I don't know if you know him, he's actually a partner of Tony Robbins. I've worked with clientele who are at that level, essentially, to help them mentally, which is a really, really cool thing. But now let's go back to the topic, which is the experience last night when I was reading Becoming Supernatural. It was talking about how he was doing a meditation and attempting to spark the third eye, so to speak, which is the pineal gland, which is what essentially people experience other dimensions from. The pineal gland actually produces natural DMT, and that opens up the gateway, so to speak. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try this. And something very interesting happened was I was just sitting in my bed, I was laying back and I was just visualizing right here, like putting energy here. And I noticed the amount of resistance that would come up within me. And I would say it was actually fear, because there were times where I would allow myself to let go. And what would actually happen is right as I completely let go of any degree of mental control, my whole body, and I'm not kidding when I say this, but my whole body would just start like literally waking up. My heart would start racing intensely, and everything started opening up, and I felt the energy travel up. If you look up the chakra system from my base chakra, which is, I believe it's in your hips. I would have to actually check, but it's basically right in your genital area, and it travels up the spine, right? So it's actually the bottom of the spine essentially, and I would feel the energy travel all the way up. And what it does is it goes around through the base of the skull, boom, right into the pineal gland, produces the DMT, and that's where the visions come. Hear me out. Right when that was happening, and I felt like I was literally about to transcend, my heart would not stop racing, and it was fear. It was fear. And the reason why it was fear is because the amount of letting go I had to do to get to that point was actually scary. I had a fear of losing everything that I had gotten to until this point in my life. I had to forget about everything. I had to forget about what I did from a career point of view. I had to forget about who I thought I was. I had to forget about everyone in my life because to hit that point, there was a complete letting go of the ego. And there was a fear around an ego death. And it was so interesting how I would get glimpses of that pure just in it. But then I would, right when it was starting to happen, the mind would then come in and go, oh, it's happening. Oh, this is it. Right? I'd start getting in my head, and that would take me out of it. So that taught me something. It taught me how much fear is in control of our lives. How much we allow fear to control our lives. And we fear things because on a deep level, we have an attachment to the things in our life. We have an attachment to how we look. We have an attachment to how we see ourselves in the world relative to another thing. We create attachments. They're like imaginary strings that will keep you tied down. And that experience really taught me that to experience no fear requires a complete letting go. A complete letting go. And that is still something I'm working through. And it's something that I'm learning to integrate as I continue to progress in this journey, is to come from a place of no attachment. Easier said than done. But I've been already seeing results just from a level of less attachment compared to before. And this is something I always teach to clients of mine, which is, people who accomplish the life that they want, like the true life that they want, they never doubt for a moment that they can do it. They just have the vision, they go for it. There's no doubt whether they can or they can't. They don't have fear around it. And the ones who do have fear, they don't act from that place. They acknowledge it, but they still do the necessary actions. But I was thinking for a moment, how deep can I go into this spiritual realm to where I don't have fear around certain steps in the process that will take you to another level? And that's still a realm I'm not sure what that experience will be, because part of me is also fearful that I will be so detached from this reality that I almost just not be relatable to anyone. I won't be, like, I can help, but I won't actually feel it the same way. And this could be a limiting belief, and it's something I'm still exploring. But ultimately, I do believe that if you look at and you can look at the frequency chart, that love, that feeling of deep, pure love, expansive and creative, endless possibility, emotion within you is one of the highest experiences you can ever feel. And for me, it would be to completely rid of as much fear as possible, or not even to focus on having any kind of fear, to fully experience that. And to be able to act from that place as much as possible in this lifetime. Because if we were to completely act from that place of zero fear and not actually being worried about losing anything, because we recognize that actually nothing was ever, depends how spiritual you want to go, nothing was ever ours in this perspective, but actually you can't lose anything because we are all connected on a very deeper level, right? If you look from a macro perspective, everything is simply consciousness. So if you can recognize that actually there is nothing to lose or nothing to gain, everything is part of the same piece of fabric, then that perspective can allow you to start taking actions from a place of abundance, from a place of creativity, and it can allow you to feel a sense of bliss and joy as you do it. For example, I have certain steps in my, as I continue to expand and grow and speak to larger volumes of people on stages and things like this, to be able to approach that not from a place of being worried about maybe how you're going to perform, but to approach it from a complete place of love, to be able to go into that circumstance and say, hey, I'm here to help, I have nothing to lose, because none of it was, anything that I had to attach myself to get any source of validation. I have everything because we are all connected. To be able to come from that place is almost to be able to do anything. And I do believe that the objective is to be at that place, but the whole point of this experience for us is that we may not always feel that way. And it is the point of not always feeling that, actually, yes, feeling nervous at times, that gives us the amazing experience when we also have that sense of pure joy and we can learn to rid of the fear in that circumstance. So I don't expect perfection and every moment to be just bliss. I do expect actually moments to fall down the frequency chart, so to speak, and experience fear, experience maybe shame or anger or guilt. I don't expect that to go. But to also recognize and be able to tap into the complete opposite end of the spectrum, love, enlightenment, that is also extremely empowering. And that is essentially what I'm looking for now in the next step of my life. And maybe it could be for you too. And I really do hope it is for you. Ultimately, for everyone, I believe that should be something that they can experience. But to be able to act as much as possible and remember the state that we can operate from, our higher self, our best self, we'll be able to produce and create to an extent that we could never have imagined if we stayed in that lower level frequency. And that is the next level. That is where the world is now going. You know, the world spent a lot of time being in a place of fear. Just look around how people act. Look at political topics and stories that go on. You look at the news. There's a lot of fear-based thinking in this world. And I think people are starting to wake up and recognize those narratives at play as well. So, I had a friend tell me that it's going to be an interesting time. The world is opening up to magic. And I'm not talking like mystical dark magic that's evil and all of this stuff. I'm just talking about things that people truly didn't believe existed. Power that they could really tap into. Because we all come from the same place and there's no reason why one person can't tap into that power any more or any less than the other, except for the own lack of self-belief to be able to do so. And that was the experience last night. It was the sensation of that fear and the reminder, the awareness and the consciousness around that. And to be able to be aware in my day-to-day life of how much that is holding me back, to be able to recognize it and go, whoop, there it is, rid of it, act now, no fear. And to create as much as possible from that place. And this will be very interesting to see how life turns out when you act from that place of complete flow state, where you're not overthinking things in your head, you're acting from inspired action, from an expansive and creative place. There were always moments when I was younger and I'd look at people acting from that place and I would sense a feeling of jealousy inside of me. Oh man, I wish I could be as free as them. I could have. I didn't allow myself to. So now when we can recognize and understand why that is, we can learn to get out of our own way. And we can rid the fear of any judgment, because we also do recognize as well that judgment is typically a projection of self-rejection in some kind of way. Because if you, on an individual level, had only love to give and you had nothing to lose, you would never really want to put judgment on someone else. Why would you do that? The only reason you'd want to put judgment on other people is because if there was something within you were also rejecting. So that with that knowledge, we can understand then that there's nothing to fear around judgment because it's not personal. It's actually personal for them. So we can learn to come from love instead and love them regardless of the judgment, because they're going through something in their own life, which then allows us to give ourselves permission to act from our greatest place. And that's the beautiful thing, is to recognize that actually everything here in this world that we live through is typically just everyone projecting onto each other in our own worldview. But for you and for your experience here, you can also recognize that typically how you navigate through life and the things and your experience of life will also be a reflection of your sense of self-projection. The more we can increase our level of awareness around these things and operate from an expansive place, I truly believe the more fulfilling life that we will live. Something to think about. Well, my recommendation to you moving forward from this video is to have more of a filter of when you are coming from fear or love. If you're coming from a place of contractiveness, things that you're scared of losing, playing small, or if you're coming from love, where you're not actually scared of losing anything because you recognize you can't lose anything. You can only lose the identification process that you created around that thing. And so to be able to act from a place of love, to where you cannot lose things, your cup is full and you are simply expanding upon that and sharing and gifting and allowing the world to come up as a collective. Fear or love? Something to think about. Hope that helps. Stay tuned. Let's keep in touch on the journey.